and his plans to coach again. This comes from Pete Bedell at the Courier Mail. Speaking in detail for the first time since his dramatic Brisbane exit 5 months ago, Walters admitted he was gutted by the decision and it isn't yet ready to watch his son Billy run out in Broncos colours. I was shocked. We were a long way down the track planning for 2025. We'd hired 2 assistants, made some changes where we needed to make some changes. I rang my manager and sort of said, I've got a bad feeling in my stomach and something isn't quite right. He made a phone call and we went in and they made a decision to finish up with me. I've been sacked, basically. So some really, strong details there from Kevy and understandable. Going back just to the top bit with Billy Walters playing for the Broncos, it's gonna. You can tell he was always a guy from afar looking at Kevy. He wears his heart on his sleeve. So for him to still be emotional about this decision is understanding, in my opinion.
Such a weird thing for Kevy to experience. We saw it with Brad Arthur as well last year, where you've been sacked, but your son's playing. So you want him to do well, obviously. So you want, I'm sure Kevy's sitting there going, I want Billy to do well. Does he want Brisbane to win a you know what I mean? It'd be so weird. So I can understand that. And he's right. They hired new assistants. Trent Barrett had committed to be one assistant. Ben Teo was the other one under Kevy Walters. So they've made all these changes.
Have they both stayed as well?
They've stayed.
I know Benny Teo did. I wasn't sure if
Baz
Trent
is there. Trent's there. So, because they were so far down the path with those guys. Well, they committed, right? So it would have been a massive payout to get rid of the coach and the assistant coaches and bring a new coach and all this sort of stuff in. So Madge and Michael Maguire has kept those guys on. But, it leads to the thought around Kevy. Do you feel like he's a walk-up start to be an NRL coach again?
It's going to be tough. I thought because of his ties and his playing experience at the Brisbane Broncos and being a multiple champion, he did make sense at the Broncos. He's been around for a while, Kevy. People might not be aware of it. If you've only followed his first grade journey, he's down at Melbourne Storm for a little bit. He was at my ex-team, the Catalan Dragons, for a season or two. So he'd been plying his trade for a while. All the reports I got from players that I knew was that he was a really good assistant coach. And sometimes that doesn't translate, Michael. Yeah. Sometimes they get there and that guy who, like Kevy, wears his heart on his sleeve and they love being around the playing group. Sometimes you need to just remove yourself from that, and some coaches struggle with it. Baz is another prime example where everyone at Penrith loved Baz as an assistant, and it sort of didn't work out as well for him at Manly and at the Bulldogs, obviously. So I'm not going to completely rule it out, but I think it's highly unlikely.
He doesn't sit there and walk up straight into a gig. I think that's the number one. He doesn't go, Kevy's going to sit back and choose what job is next for him. It's not going to happen like that. So if he does put his hand up, and it seems like he wants to coach again, he's going to have to go through a process. I think the interesting one for me, as you said, given his personality and the interesting type of coach you're going to need for PNG, I think maybe if Kevy was in charge of PNG, because he's such a likable character, and the fact that they're going to be living with each other, right? So they're all essentially going to be roommates. Everyone in the village, they're calling it in PNG. His sort of larrikin personality and the fact that he's not intense 24/7. Like someone like Madge wouldn't work in PNG because you walk past Madge and you're uptight, or you know what I mean, like or potentially sticky, like a Ricky and those sort of guys, those really intense coaches couldn't work. They just wouldn't work. But someone like Kevy, who is a larrikin, he's a knockabout, he's got a hard edge to him, obviously, because you don't win as many comps as he did and coach the way he did without that hard edge. But maybe I could see him.
That's not the worst shout specifically for PNG. Outside of PNG, I wasn't even sort of going down that track. But if you do bring up PNG, that because of those reasons, that does make a little bit of sense.
Could you imagine Des?
Desi.
You couldn't.
No. The one that stands out and has always stood out for me, I think we mentioned it off air, Adrian Lam makes a lot of sense for the PNG team. So that's why I've always sort of just been, ever since I found out about the PNG bid, I've always just associated Adrian Lam as the.
It's not a lock though. It's definitely not a lock. But it does make sense in terms of their greatest player. He's had success now. He's coached lower grades in Australia now. Had success in the Super League and been right. It was Mal Meninga's right-hand man for the Kangaroos for a long time. So has that resume. So he'll definitely be in the mix. But there'd be which coach would you have never loved to have lived with?
Oh, live with.
Like in terms of a situation like that. So you've got the coaches, you had a few.
Yeah.
Which one we go, yeah, no, I'm not living with this bloke. Doesn't mean they're a bad coach.
No.
Right?
And it doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person either.
Like Madge, right? Awesome coach.
Yeah.
Awesome coach.
I've only met Madge a couple of times, and I've never met him in the setting of being obviously a player of his. But Madge has always been really good to me.
He's great. No, he's awesome.
But
right?
as
but I wouldn't want him as my next door neighbour if he's your coach. Do you know what I mean?
Depends if he could, and obviously with the intensity with trainings and that was, I guess you always hear those. I used to hear it from South players all the time about how hard the trainings were, and specifically for the guys at the back end of their career. But if you're a footy head too, and you just want to watch a whole heap of footy, having Madge next door, that could be something that you'd enjoy. Out of all the coaches that I had, and this is only in the under 20, Sticky would be hard. Yeah. Sticky would be intense.
Yeah,
Sticky would be intense.
Which one would you could you live with then? Who'd be the
Toovs was pretty easy going.
Yeah.
Toovs was like Kevy Walters in a lot of ways. Club legend, plied his trade in the lower grades.
To a grand final.
We went to a grand final in 13. You could have a beer with Toovs, 2 beer twos we used to call him. Used to come out, we had a really good culture there, and we used to celebrate the wins and the losses together a lot at Manly, and Toovs was a part of it. So he was really easy to get along with. He's the one that sort of stands out. BA had him for a little bit at Parramatta. He's always had an angry head, but I got along with him really well. He'd be intense like Madge.
Yes.
Steve Kearney,
It's not those intense sort of coaches won't work in PNG.
No, you're right. You're right.
Can't.
Or is understanding the culture is going to be huge as well. So that's why going back to the Adrian Lam show.
For sure, because it'd be interesting to see how many. Initially, I don't know how, out of the squad of 30, how many pure local-based players there will be. But eventually...
What do you reckon? What's your number unders and overs? They're going to have about 10, I reckon.
No way.
You don't
they won't
think
have 10. No, not to be a... I don't think so, because I just don't think... But are we talking Alex Johnston? What are we talking? Guys that are eligible for the Kummels.
Yeah.
There might be 6.
I reckon you might see a few Super League players come back
definitely.
as well. Like guys like Nene McDonald.
The hooker.
Edwin and Pape. He's NRL quality, mate. He's a guy that's been over there.
Yeah.
And he's killed it, and he's played really well for the Kummels. So he would be a priority signing for him.
I think 10's a lot in their first year out of 30.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's a lot. But eventually, they'll want 20.
That should be the
out
plan.
of their 30.
Yeah, that
right?
should be the
and
plan.
then fill in what you need with some NRL talent. That will be the plan. And I think that's the way, in 10 years' time, that's the way it will go. But in the short term, that's going to be a little bit difficult. But there's another issue that's been bubbling along today. We've got a couple of questions on this. Richard from Melbourne. Hi, Michael. I heard all the talk about Hazelton with Storm is not true. What do you know? And UD says, boys, if Tom Hazelton goes to the Storm, you might as well hand them the premiership. Well, Tom Hazelton has been in the news over the last couple of days, obviously with his future, the Dragons, the Dolphins, the Knights. They're probably the 3 leading clubs trying to prize him out of the Sharks at the end of this season. And there was a quote here from his agent saying he could learn so much if this is about Tom Hazelton going to the Storm. Learn so much there, and if he signs a long-term deal with Melbourne, Cronulla may even let him go. Okay?
Wow.
So that went off today. And it forced, which is very rare, you don't see clubs do this too often, the Melbourne Storm to put a statement on their website. This is what it says. Melbourne Storm wishes to clarify media reports published earlier this morning regarding Tom Hazelton. At no stage has the club reached out to Hazelton, his management, or the Cronulla Sharks about recruiting the prop to Melbourne. The club will be making no further comment. So take that as read. Tom Hazelton will not be at the Storm next season. And I can understand where the chat has sort of stemmed from, considering they've lost Christian Welsh.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of, there's very few props on the market. He's probably the pick. Well, he's the pick of the bunch at the moment, Tom Hazelton. That's why he's going to get a massive payday. But the Storm, very rarely do clubs come out and
shut it down
something like this.
Yeah, shut it down straight away. I guess because of a lot of people sort of be trying to put the puzzle together with the Christian Welsh situation. I like Tom Hazelton. What are you hearing, Michael? Like in terms of value on the market and what some of these top tier front rows are getting at the moment? I said, on the podcast earlier in the week, I think he's going to get north of 500, and I think he's worth it. I reckon he's a He's an ascending player. He looks a little bit older than what he is and he's a cult hero there. But he's got nice, for a big fella, he's got nice, it's not even footwork. It's a bit of a swerve. With obviously the Adam Fanua-Blake signing at Cronulla, I think they're going to struggle to retain Hazelton. So I think a few of these clubs that have been in the sweepstakes for Stefano and Leo Thompson and the likes, Tom Hazelton's now their number one target.
No doubt, yeah. And you nailed it. You look at Leo Thompson going to the Dogs, and the clubs that were in for him were, well, Newcastle was his incumbent club, and then you had the Dolphins and the Dragons sniffed around as well. Well, look at the clubs in now for Hazelton. The Dolphins, the Knights, because they lost Thompson, and the Dragons. It is interesting because, you know, it's his size and his leg speed, which makes him, you know, a tough guy to tackle and put down. But it's a different body shape at the Sharks as well, which has helped and created a difference. And you mentioned as well, Scoping, 100% right around the value. Well, he was asking for 600, and a few clubs were like, "Oof."
A couple of weeks ago, they might have been going, you know, like even with some trial experience, like he played well in that first trial, and then he sort of backed it up again. We've also got some audio here from Sharks CEO Dino Mezzatesta about Tom Hazelton.
There's no questions we want to keep Tom. He's learnt his craft here amongst the players that he's got, and certainly under the coaching staff, and I think he's certainly flourishing under that coaching staff and the players around him. So, you know, we'd like to think and say that if there was no choices available to him, he'd be staying here. But look, the game is a business as well, and it's nice though to see that the players from the Sharks are wanted and sought after players. I mean, that's credit to our club. If anything, naturally we don't want to lose him.
Yeah, that's the I guess the beauty of the salary cap era. We talked about the depth of the Cronulla Sharks. The Penrith Panthers have gone through it. The Melbourne Storm have gone through it for years. And when you keep producing good players like the Sharks have been under the Fitzy era, unfortunately there are players that you'd love to keep, but not everyone can keep them, Michael.
And they've probably had the most stable roster over the past couple of years, aside from probably even more so than Penrith, because Penrith have always lost one or two big-name players over the past couple of years. Cronulla have had a pretty set 17 over the last few seasons. Obviously, they lost Al Finucane last year, Wade Graham the year before, Jack Williams this year. But aside from that, it's been pretty good. But, you know, they've already done well to re-sign Wilton, and Nicola and Ronaldo have all re-signed already. But they've got a few off contract. And Braden Trindle's also re-signed. But he's one. Oric Fusi's the other one as well, who had an option this year. He's taken that up. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. You know, Toby Rudolph hasn't been as dominant since he re-signed. Hamlin Ueli as well, who, you know, they fought off the Warriors. The Warriors thought they had him at one stage. They lost Royce Hunt to the Tigers. So, yeah, it's a juggle for the Sharks. And knowing that they signed Adam Fanua-Blake at top-end money, you know, something has got to give. And it might be Hazelton that's squeezed out. But, you know, Dolphins, Drags, Knights.
I reckon if they could have their time back, because Hazelton right now would be a guy that I'd love to keep, and that Hamlin Uele contract just before they got added, that's the one where it's I think left them in a bit of a predicament moving forward because they've had to let go of Royce Hunt as well. Let's kick it off with the Parramatta versus Newcastle game tonight. I'm looking at both sixes in this game. I'm hearing Fletcher Sharp is almost a lock to become the 5'8" this year, and they're going to find out and try to figure out who the 7 is. Jack Cogger gets first crack tonight. Dylan Brown, he's been in the news now for the last 3 or 4 weeks. He'll be, I guess, controlling the game a little bit more so again with Mitch Moses not playing in this game. So I'm interested to see how both sixes go, Michael.
Yeah, I can't argue with Fletcher Sharp. I think that's going to be, it's an interesting watch, right? Because he's so dynamic, and the criticism around the Knights has been a lack of speed in take Kalen Ponga out, obviously, but in their halves and at hooker, they haven't had much spark there. So Fletcher Sharp will give them that. He'll give them a bit of unpredictability with the ball because their attack has been so pedestrian, right? So I understand the move, and for the Knights to be successful, it's got to work because you can't have a halves pairing of Cogger and Gamble or Cogger and Hastings or Crossland in there. It's got to be Fletcher Sharp just because of that unpredictability.
Yeah, they want to settle on something too. That's been the biggest problem for the Knights in the last couple of years. I was looking at the Dolphins and Cowboys game. It's at this stage, it's probably just a lot of squad players. There's not really anyone Of interest, who'll be playing a lot of week in, week out first grade there for the Dolphins. There might be a couple of players that can put their best foot forward and try find some bench spots. But we'll move to tomorrow, and I'll be looking at this game as well with the Warriors. This is their second hit out. They're only 2 weeks away from Vegas.
Yep.
Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and the role he plays on the wing. Now, I've seen Webster that he was... he had a little crack at this at the back end of last year, and I was chatting to Mitchy Pearce come on and joined our podcast, and he talked about in 2013, Roger playing that hybrid role with Anthony Minichiello at the back end of 2013 with great success, and he can envision something like that again for Roger.
Yeah, and I heard Andrew Webster on with Vossi and Brandy during the week, and he said essentially they just, at centre, he just didn't get enough ball last year. So they think, and fundamentally, wingers carry the ball more than at centre. So if you're not being able to get clean ball from the inside man, you can understand that position. Look, I still think he should be fullback because he's elite. Well, he was elite before he went to rugby, but let's see. Hopefully we get to see him roam a bit more and get his hands on the ball because we know how dynamic he can be for the Warriors. So playing at wing is not to leave him parked out on the wing. It's to get him in on the ball a bit more. So if they can operate, Tuipuki's they got high hopes for him.
Yeah.
Chance is still a really good NRL player. So they've got some options there in that number 1 jersey, but Tuivasa-Sheck on the wing. And, we know that the strength of the Warriors over the past couple of years was Watene-Zelezniak and Montoya carrying big carries.
Yep.
Right, Montoya's gone to the Dogs. Dallin's injured. So, they love those big back too to help with their carries. So Roger will be doing a fair bit of that.
Yeah, that was his bread and butter early on in his career. Moving over to the Rabbitohs and Manly, I think he's going to be just another excellent Hopewadi that we see. John's had, a couple of his sons now play
a lot
in the NRL, and then one, even his daughter playing the NRLW. Leo Hopewadi could be just as good as Will, and I say that with high praise because Will was an outstanding player, and Lehigh, he just looks like an absolute talent. And again, we're looking at a cover backup if anything was to happen to Tommy Trbojevic. Now Manly don't want that, but feel like they've got good cover if something does happen.
Well, what happens? Yeah, you're 100% right about Hopewadi, but what happens to Manly's back 5, right? Because someone misses out because you've got Tommy at fullback. Then you've got, Talau was outstanding for him last year. He was...
Outside of probably the emergence of Leo Hopewadi, I reckon he was probably one of the better stories at Manly.
Yeah, outstanding, right? Then you've got Saab coming off the back of injury. Kohler just didn't reach peak form last year. He carried an injury. Then you've got Garrick as well. One of those players miss out. So that's going to be an interest. If they're fully fit, one misses out. So that's going to be interesting to see. I
think Saab's the one who's missed a lot of time now with an ankle injury. I think he had a surgery on the ankle injury. Therefore, it's really important when you do have competition at spots to be getting reps. So those players like Leo Hopewadi, Tommy Talau, Tolu Kola, Ruben Garrick, they're probably they're in the front seat to get first crack because they've been doing all the preseason.
Yeah. I want to see how Takiaho goes.
Yeah,
for Manly, starting in the front row. It was really weird his journey back to the NRL. He was, Canterbury tried to sign him 2 years in a row, failed a medical, and then looked like they were going to sign him again. But he's ended up at Manly off the back of getting sacked at Catalans for going to a concert.
Yeah, that's a typical Catalan fun. Trust me, I know. I've been there. I've lived that. They've got weird sackings over there. Trust me.
So went to a concert, got sacked, and and the Bulldogs were going to offer him big money to sign a couple of years ago, but now he's back in the NRL and gets an opportunity at starting a prop for Manly. What about the next game? Broncos Titans. Anyone there?
Broncos Titans. My old mate. He's still getting around. Kieran Foran, and there was chat about him potentially playing a utility bench role this year. I think he has to play 7. They're trying to fit 3 fullbacks into 3 positions in the 1, 7, and 6 jersey. We're going to see AJ Brimson. He's going to be the 6. A lot of people think it's probably going to be Jaden Campbell at either 6 or 7 this year, so I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. And as for the Broncos team...
just on the Titans, mate. Yep. How do you see that working then? Because obviously, I think Desi's come out and said it looks like Foran's going to be the 14.
Yep.
With Kinney at fullback, Campbell and Brimson in the halves. How do you see that dynamic, those 4 players working in that 17?
Yeah, well, look, Desi's the one that's been putting in the work with him all throughout the season, so he must be really confident in Jaden Campbell as a 7. And I guess I've been hesitant around it because AJ Brimson's also a player that's missed a lot of footy in the last couple of years. When he plays, he's a top-tier player. He's an origin player. He's very versatile. He looked a little bit frustrated playing centres up there over the last couple of years once Jaden Campbell emerged and then Keanu Kinney last year. So this gives him the opportunity to probably be more on ball. I think for those positions, it could be it'll come down to health. Of both Kieran, who's missed some time, he had a pretty good season last year, health-wise, and AJ Brimson, and how they're able to look early on in the season. And if indeed Foz does start at 14, it's always good for Desi to have someone like Foz there. They've got a great relationship. He'll be talking him through it, and then that's the perfect backup plan. Like they might give it 5 or 6 weeks. Desi gets to have a look at it, knowing that he can just put Fozzie in at any time and potentially run it for the back end of the season. Yeah,
it is interesting. I get why they're doing it because they're their 3 best attacking players, right? And if it doesn't work, and I said this over summer for breakfast, Scope, and I don't know if you agree, if it doesn't work, they need to sell one of those 3 because they're high valued. They're first graders, right? They're all first graders. They're all really, really good players. But there's no point having 3 if they all want to play in the one position and it affects the balance of the squad and you're trying to manufacture something. So for the Titans, hopefully it works, right? And they have 4 coming on and, Campbell and Brimson working out. And if there's an injury in a game, those, they're so versatile they can move and 4 will slot into the halves, right? But if it doesn't work, I feel like one of those 3, at least one of those 3, have to go.
Yeah, it's the position at the moment, Michael. It's there's so much depth and talent at the fullback position across the board. Like if you have a look at Canberra, they had Chevy Stewart come on, who's under 19s fullback for New South Wales in waiting. Suafalongo sitting behind Ryan Pappenhausen. You can go through the teams, and there's a pretty good backup at almost every team. Now, like you're saying, all 3 of these guys would be really good starters. So it's a good position to be in. You want to have talent in your team. You want to have flexibility. As for the Broncos, it'll be an important hit out for a couple of guys. Billy Walters, he's in the 6 jersey.
What do you make of that?
Well, I was hearing Tyson Smoothie was moving on. I've been hearing rumours that he could be going overseas. Is that done?
For 2026, it's done.
Okay.
Whether or not they release him early, they might because there's just a logjam of 9s there, isn't there? But Moses injured, so maybe they're reluctant there. But I do find it interesting Billy named at 6.
Yeah.
What that means for his, are they looking at him as that potential 14. And not starting hooker.
Well, he's probably more capable of playing 6 than what Tyson Smoothie is, so maybe it's just purely that. For the other games, we've got the Bulldogs versus the West Tigers. A lot of these sort of players for the Bulldogs, I was looking at them before. A lot of sort of backups, guys that are going to be sort of competing for positions. An important trial for some of these players for the Tigers. They don't really have the luxury because of the last couple of years to be resting starters. Benji needs to get as many answers as possible. So Lachlan Galvin, if anything was to happen to Jerome Lyon for whatever reason, he can't start. I like Latu Fainu, but they need to get Jerome back ASAP, and they need to get him not necessarily for trials and winning trials. They just need to start getting some reps together.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously that Tigers lineup, they've got Galvin there, they've got Clemmer there, Talon De Silva there. But not a stack. Well, neither side are really stacked with NRL talent.
Bailey Hayward at hooker too. He's a good player.
A good player.
They've gone. The pack has evolved. The forward pack at the Bulldogs has gone. They were. I think Serraldo sort of was forced into a small ball forward pack last year, but they're starting to get some size there through the middle as well. So.
You're still here? We'll see more on the Joel and Fletch socials and catch us live on SEN Radio. Because if you don't, you're an A grade. But if you do, you're the absolute Mickey.